with the 47 gardens that we have, if a plot becomes available, then that person goes wherever there's a plot available. Now, certainly we try to get a plot close to where they live, but you know, if there's a bus stop close by, that helps, you know, to wherever they have to go. The other thing to keep in mind is the diversity of the people. You know, you have a lot of children in the neighborhood, you have a lot of seniors. You have to keep that in mind as well when you're developing your community garden. Now, again, the closeness to public transit is also important. But I'm repeating here, but we didn't follow all the steps that I'm outlining today because we already had the site in mind, and it was next to the building, and we knew that the city owned it. We knew its history. We knew it had no contamination. So what we did is we filled out the forms that from the city, and then we were approved for the garden before the meeting with the tenants. So that was kind of how we did it, but you know, it might be different, you know, for somebody else. It just depends if it's going to be on city land, provincial, you know, federal, church land. You might follow the steps in a different order. Okay. So step number 6, prepare and develop the site. So the land will need preparation for planting, and you'll need to organize volunteers to clean it, to gather materials and decide on the design and the plot arrangement. For us, the city dug up the sod, they took it away, they dumped compost, they spread it, and then beside the garden, they left a pile of wood chips so that we could have paths in between our plots. Okay, that was very important because the gardeners need a place to walk in between the plots. Okay, so they're not tramping on each other's plots. So this is back in the first year. So you can see they're getting ready. Like the plots have been marked, staked out, and you can see the little shed was set up there, and the big pile of wood chips at the back. So that's what the city dumped. And yeah, so those are the dimensions. 10 by 10. Yeah. Yeah, and some people had most of them had one plot, but some had 2 plots. Yeah. So step number 7. So the members have to decide how many plots, and there's the dimensions right there, they're 10 by 10. So how many are available and how they will be assigned. And so once you pick a coordinator, that can be done through the coordinator. Like the coordinator can set up a meeting, and then it'll be decided, you know, who gets a plot and where all the plots are going to be situated. Allow a space for storing tools, allow a space for your water cistern, you know, a place for making compost, and again, don't forget the paths. Those are really important. We initially had problems with kids running through the plots in the first year. This year, it was brought up again at the meeting, and somebody wanted to ban kids from the community garden. So I suggested we create a plot for the kids, and it worked. It worked. So, and how do you enforce banning the kids anyway, you know, from hanging around the community garden? So a better solution was getting them involved. We had a lot of seniors in the building, and so we needed to accommodate them. So the entrance to, we have the apartment building, the parking lot, a big fence, and then the garden. But the opening to get to the garden, like there was no opening at the fence. People had to go way at the end of the parking lot and then to get into the garden. So we created an entrance closer to accommodate seniors, and we made the entrance big because some are use walkers, and we built a ramp as well. So you have to think of the people that you're going to be serving, and you have to try and accommodate them. And yeah, people wanted to socialize, so we didn't create the seating area, they did. They felt that there was a need, and they needed an area where they could gather and communicate, so they did that all on their own. And some people felt this year that they wanted to create an extra plot for produce for the food bank. And so that was an addition to our community garden. And again, that came from the gardeners. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. So here are some of the gardeners. These are some of the Syrians. And this is the garden this year in the spring at Tallwood. So step number 8, plan your community garden based on the demographics of the area. So, like I mentioned, if you have kids, if you have seniors, and so on. And these are the people that were interviewed on CBC. The gentleman on the bottom is Osama. He's with our family. And then that couple right there at the top, that's another Syrian family. But at the time, there were 10 Syrian families in the building, and they all participated. And the nice thing about having different nationalities is, like I said, they grew different vegetables, and when we had potlucks at the end, you got to sample some of the traditional food. It was amazing. It really was. Step number 9. So determine rules and put them in writing. So you need guidelines. You need, to outline maybe the roles and responsibilities. And it's important to have them in writing and to involve everybody. Everybody needs to be on the same page. They need to know how the garden is going to operate. And if everybody has a job to do, then there's less arguing and fewer conflicts. And so what sorts of rules do you think that you should have when you have a community garden? Yes?
Hours of operation.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We have to keep the tools and
Yep.
how to manage that and
Yep.
maintaining them.
Oh yes, absolutely, and we did have problems with that. We had to remind people to clean the tools and put them away in the shed. You don't leave them out in the rain, because they'll get all rusty. So yes, definitely, that was an important one. Because you can't be buying tools every year.
Respecting each other's thoughts.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And we were very fortunate because we didn't have any problems with vandalism or people stealing food. Now, that's not to say that it wasn't happening in other community gardens, but it didn't in ours. But I'm sure that's something that might come up, and that would have to be discussed at a meeting, how we would deal with that. But I think involving the kids helped. They took pride in the community garden, and so maybe they were less likely to go and trample on the pots and take food or, so. Did you ever have too much?
I make kale chips till they're coming out.
I know, exactly. Sometimes you plan something and you just get so much and you can't, you're one person and you just can't eat it all. And so consider, if you're going to have a lot, consider donating to a food bank. we had a number of people that donated, not to the food bank, but they donated to other tenants in the building that didn't have a plot, but that were needy, that could use the extra fresh produce. But like I said, this year they decided to have an extra plot, and the food was going to go to the food bank. Does anyone know what gleaning means? Have you ever heard that term before? Yeah? Can anybody give the definition? Or
I would imagine from the gleaners that we have across Ontario, the reason why it's a biblical term. And it's I think some of you may have seen it, sometimes a carrot that may have two carrots with only one head. So pretty much it's vegetables that cannot be used for retail. And because they're not what we would expect the vegetable to look like or whatever. And that does happen. So in the
Yeah.
years, they take them and they dehydrate them and then use that to make vegetable-based soups for our dinners.
Yep, yep. So we have a group called the Peterborough, excuse me, the Peterborough Gleaners, and they bring together local volunteers and people living with limited means to ensure that everybody has access to healthy food. And they fund and they organize trips to area farms to pick produce that the growers donate. So in this photo, this is McLean's Berry Farm, just on the outskirts of Peterborough, and they're one of the farms that allow people to go and pick produce that's left over at the end of the season. So for example, at the end of the strawberry season, they'll call the Peterborough Gleaners and they'll say, we're done picking, because they usually pick and sell at the farmer's market. So they'll call and they'll say, we're done picking, but there's still a lot out there. So the Gleaners will organize a busload of people, and usually we advertise that at the food bank. And so they'll take a busload, and then people can they bring their own containers and baskets and whatnot, and they just pick to their heart's content, whatever's left over. And they do it for different vegetables and fruit. Okay? So St. Vincent de Paul, at my conference, every year we give money to pay for the buses to take the gleaners to the fields. Okay?
They're picking for themselves or picking
Yes,
for...
no, they're picking for themselves. Yep, yep, and it's all free. Yeah, it's going to go to waste if it just sits in the field. So that's something, if you could get in touch with, to see if you have an organization like that in your community.
I was just going to ask you that, being that this one is called Peterborough Gleaners, do you know if there are an association for farmers that want to be gleaners that they're offered that?
That I'm not sure. You'd have to Google it. I'm not, and I know that this isn't the only farm. They take them to other farms as well. But this is the main one. They're just so kind, these people. They just, yeah.
Okay.
So during the growing season, they might do maybe 3 trips out to the farms, 3 or 4 trips out to the farms to.
I'm just thinking of being able to do that for our own public.
Yeah, but you need, a lot of volunteers. But yeah, for sure, to get fresh, healthy produce. And often these families can't afford fresh produce, so any opportunity, to access free, fresh produce is a bonus. Okay. Another thing to consider is canning, and in Peterborough, Nourish offers canning workshops, and I know that the Syrians do a lot of canning, and I've been the recipient of many jars of, have you ever had pickled turnips? Delicious. How many of you have ever eaten shawarma? Yes. Yeah, it's a Persian wrap. Well, a shawarma has pickled turnips in it. I always thought they were beets because they're the color of beets. But when they pickle their beets, they chop the turnips into long pieces, and then they add some beets to the jar to give it to make them go pink. But it's not pickled beets; it's pickle turnip, and it's really good. And in a wrap, it's